I want to talk to you about 4 ways your emotional health could actually be sabotaging your church as a church leader. Our emotional health matters a lot, and the emotional health of a church leader will directly affect their department and the church that they're called to. It's actually called the mirror principle. So a mirror, you're able to, it reflects what's there. A congregation, after about 5 years, starts to reflect that pastor, or the staff person who's leading that department, it begins to reflect them. And what a lot of leaders don't understand, the problems they're having in their church is merely because they're the problem, and they haven't dealt with those things yet. A lot of leaders like to look into a window. That means they blame their staff, their department, their congregation, whatever it is, for things that are going wrong, instead of taking responsibility and saying, if I get better, if I get emotionally healthy, then they're going to get emotionally healthier as well. It's the mirror principle. And what I want to do is help you understand there's 4 ways that your emotional health or lack of could be sabotaging your church or your department. There are 4 types of leaders that I want to talk about. The first one is the insecure leader. The insecure leader often injures others. An insecure leader is defensive. They argue. They want to be right. They're there to make a point, not make a difference. And many times they have breakdowns in relationships. And you're wondering, why are they mad at that person? Why are they jealous of that person? And they kind of reflect King Saul. King Saul had David, who was sent to him as a gift, as a successor, and all King Saul could do was go after David the whole time. And what started this whole thing is when David slew Goliath, he took care of one of Saul's greatest problems. If Saul just would have embraced him, people would have loved Saul. But on the way back from there, these ladies were hanging out the windows in the street singing a song. They said, Saul has slain his thousands, but now David has slain his 10,000s. And Saul did not like that. So he began to go after David, wanting to kill David. The jealousy rose up in him. And many times we're just like King Saul. We're insecure. We can't take criticism. We can't take feedback. And so therefore, we begin to injure other people by arguing, saying very salty things to them, hurting their feelings. And we wonder why no staff want to stay with us. We wonder why we can't keep people in our department. And the reason is, it's because we're insecure, and we've got to deal with that. The second type of leader that sabotages, the narcissistic leader, is consumed with the non-essentials. That's a narcissistic leader. This type of leader is consumed with the spotlight. They're consumed with physical attendance. They're consumed with metrics. And really, it's all about how to boost their ego. To have a big day at church, for big baptisms, for numbers to go up, has very little to do with the kingdom, even though they tell you that it is. At the end of the day, they're very insecure. They need people, and lots of them, to give them pats on the back, to give them approval and their self-worth. Matter of fact, everything needs to look amazing for their own ego, for their image. That matters at all cost. Now, the person in the Bible who did this, that was King Solomon. King Solomon was a narcissist. You say, wait a minute. He wrote Proverbs, and he did this and that. He was a great king. Yeah, and Solomon was all about some Solomon. Like, he built these huge, the temples and the city. I mean, everything he did was grandiose. It was great. The Queen of Sheba came just to come look at it and just blown away with it. But I wonder that if Solomon always lived in the shadow of his dad David, because David was, again, the greatest king in the history of Israel. I bet Solomon heard that all the time, all the great things that David did. And I just wonder if Solomon always wanted to outdo his dad. Well, why would you say that? Well, look at the end of Solomon's life. In Ecclesiastes, he writes a book, and the book is, what was the point? What is the point? Why does it even matter? He was extremely depressed at the end of his life. And I think so many times narcissistic leaders go to climb and climb and climb, and they get there. It doesn't fill them up. And you know what? They're depressed. And that's how Solomon was. So that's what narcissistic leaders are, consumed with the non-essentials. The third type of leader is the depressed leader. The depressed leader is a detached leader. They haven't seen the results they thought they would see. They had big vision, big dreams. And so they're the person who's tried it all. You try to give them an idea, well, I've tried that, I've worked on that. And they are secretly depressed. They know all the leadership books, they know all the principles, but they've given up. They don't have joy for ministry anymore. They don't enjoy even Jesus anymore. Their life is what I would call like a black and white movie. They have no color to it. They're detached. And a lot of times, you have to realize this, they don't go to gatherings where leaders gather because they're depressed. They don't gather and eat lunch with their congregants. They don't spend time with them because they're depressed. Think about this. Elijah did that. He faced insults and threats from Jezebel, he was so excited, had great success, but faced that, and then what happened? He wanted to die. He was tired, and he wanted to give up. And there's a lot of leaders, maybe that's you today, that you're the detached leader because you're depressed, but you haven't wanted to deal with your depression, what has caused it and where you're at with it. And that's hurting your church. And the fourth type of leader is the people-pleasing leader. Here's what they do. The people-pleasing leader plugs holes. That's what they do. This leader creates as many problems as they solve by trying to make everybody happy. And so there's always a problem because once they make somebody happy, it makes somebody else unhappy. You know the tension that goes with the music is too loud, or is it not loud enough, or is it too edgy, not edgy enough? And the moment you fix one of these tensions, you've just created another problem that you have to solve. And so they'll create 15 different types of worship services so everybody can enjoy our church. The staff and themselves are often stretched way too thin because they just refuse to say no to anybody. They refuse to set boundaries because they want to please everyone. This type of leader would be Jeroboam. And Jeroboam was Solomon's son, and him and Rehoboam split the kingdom. And you know why Jeroboam was a bad leader, and you know why he was a people pleaser? He set up a golden calf to make the people happy. He literally set up a pagan idol in the temple just to make other people happy. I wonder how many church leaders do the same thing, end up sacrificing what God wants for them and setting up a pagan idol in their temple, quote unquote, to make people happy. Here's the deal. Every leader struggles with this. There's no leader that is exempt from it. What we have to do is identify whether you're a depressed leader, narcissistic leader, whatever that insecure leader, whatever it is for you. Maybe you're a people pleaser, or maybe you're like me and you're all four. And you have to learn to deal with that. If you'll get your emotional health right, you'll make the emotional health of your church better, and you'll see your church begin to change. A great resource, I want to close with this here, is called Overcoming the Dark Side of Leadership by Gary L. McIntosh. That book there is phenomenal, and it helps leaders to heal up from emotional wounds.